Welcome to the Vision for Basketball Training podcast. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Really appreciate it. If you are on Apple Podcasts, it'd be great if you guys could scroll down to the bottom of the page and leave a review. Really helps out the show. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you leave a like and subscribe as well. Thank you guys. It's awesome. And so today I want to talk about developing go-to moves and counters to those moves, because this is a question that I get pretty often, and I think it's very important for us to understand the misconceptions around the whole go-to move conception and how to actually implement these things, because there's a lot of stuff that players believe that really is a little bit misinformed when we talk about developing go-to moves and then counters to those moves as well. So, off the bat, it is very, very important to have go-to moves and then counters to those moves. But more importantly, it's important to have things that you can go to whenever you want to at least get some sort of look or some sort of opportunity. Okay, that's really what we talk about when we say a go-to move. Okay, it just is a way for you to get an opportunity to either score, make a pass, make some sort of play with the ball. Or at least get yourself some space. So it's important to have to keep that in mind when we talk about what actually is a go-to move, because the definition for it is a little bit different. We're gonna talk about that a little bit more. There really is a big misconception though with what a go-to move actually is, and a lot of players have a very limited view, a limited scope of what the true definition of it is. And off the bat, most players think that a go-to move is something like a flashy crossover or some super advanced thing that is going to get them on a highlight tape. Because when they look at, the career highlight tape for, somebody like, Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson or Kobe Bryant or Steph Curry, they see all these flashy plays and they think their go-to move has to be something flashy. And that's just not true at all. They think, a wide Iverson crossover or, a killer crossover or, an in and out behind the back, triple crossover, between the legs, step back. Like, they think that's what a go-to move should look like, when in reality, that's not the case at all. And so when players DM me and they ask about, oh, hey coach, what should I do for a go-to move? Like, what should I do? Like, what move should I get? And when I give them my answer, a lot of them are kind of surprised by how simple it is. But I want to talk about exactly what that means and how this is going to help you, how you can take what I'm going to tell you today, transfer that into your game, and become much more effective. And we're going to talk about how we can even see it when we look at the best players in the world. We look at those top NBA guys, and we really break down the details of what they're doing, how you're going to see some of these go-to moves in their games, and how you're going to see that they build everything off of those little simple moves, okay? So, the first and most important key to developing a go-to move, to really deciding what it's going to be, is you have to figure out a couple things. First of all, you have to play to your strengths, okay? So if you're not a great ball handler, then trying to be Allen Iverson and, copying what he does is probably not going to work for you, okay? So you're going to want to find something that, again, is simple. So right off the bat, the most important part of developing a go-to move is that it's simple and it's repeatable, okay? We want something that we can go to at any time. It doesn't have to be an exact situation where we can only go to this move. We're very limited, boxed in, which is what's going to happen if all your go-to moves are, just little, or if all your go-to moves are advanced, combo moves, okay? If that's the case, you're going to be very limited in when you can use that move. We want to have a move that we can go to all the time, okay? And, I love the NBA, and I'm sure probably all of you watching this love it as well. And, I'm a big fan of studying players in the NBA because they are the best. They're the best in the world at what they do. So you can learn a lot from watching those guys play basketball, especially when you start to break it down and really look at the little minute parts of what they do. And the issue, though, becomes if, you're watching highlights and you're only taking the surface level things that you see. Again, if you're watching Allen Iverson career highlights and you only take the flashy stuff and think that that's how you have to play, that's not true, because there's a lot of things he does that, if you really take a close look at it, are very, very simple, but he's so incredibly talented that he's able to add on to that and build on those simple things, which gives him that whole flashy sort of game. But it all starts with having the basics mastered. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys watch my NBA player workouts. Hopefully, a lot of you guys do them as well. And, obviously when I do those workouts, I'm taking moves that or combo sequences that all those players have used. So, but when I do that, I'll take moves that have translatable aspects to games. So my intention with those, with the NBA player workouts, is not that you're going to do those exact moves in games. Maybe you will, right? In the Allen Iverson workout, there's an in and out crossover into like a fadeaway. You might not do that exact move in a game, but if you're able to get good at that in and out, and you can get to the basket instead of having to shoot that fadeaway, that's the skill we're targeting right there. So my goal isn't that you go and do those exact moves in games. This is not what it is. My goal is that you can take bits and pieces of those skills that we practice and then be able to translate those to your own game. For example, let's say that one of those moves is an in and out, between the legs step back. We might work on that exact combo during an NBA player workout, or really any workout. But, there are multiple parts to that move that you can do separately. You can just go to the in and out, and if your defender shifts to the left side, you might be able to just attack him downhill and get to the basket. So those aren't necessarily going to be your go-to moves. Looking at one of my player workouts and saying, oh, that's my go-to move. That triple combo in the Trae Young workout is going to be my go-to move. Because that's not really what a go-to move is. Okay, they should be very, very simple, especially for younger players. Okay, you shouldn't choose a go-to move that's incredibly complex, because again, it's gonna be harder to master it, but also it's gonna be less applicable to you in games. And so you don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that your go-to move should be the same as the surface level when you look at James Harden, right? We see the crazy size up 30-foot step back threes. Just because he's doing that doesn't mean that you should also do the same exact thing. Obviously, James Harden is, very few players will ever have the freedom on offense that he has, because very few players will ever be able to shoot the ball as well as he can. That's just how it is. So trying to copy what he does exactly, looking at the surface level, is not what we want to do. My advice to players is that you don't want to get mesmerized. You don't want to get mesmerized by who has the coolest highlights. Because that's just it's not going to help you, right? You want to be able to look past that stuff, look past the surface level stuff, and try and find the simple things that these guys do that make it easy for them to score. Okay, what makes these moves work so well? And when they don't have to use a flashy move, when it's a regular play, why do they score? If it's a simple jab step into a pull up, why did that move work? Right, because the majority of their points are not going to come from flashy plays. Okay, those are plays you're going to see on ESPN, on posts all over social media, but the majority of their points are going to come from pretty everyday, pretty casual plays. So you have to be able to look at those and realize that those are what's important, not the highlights. Okay, we see like I said before, we see James Harden with the 30-foot size up step back. Okay, but we don't see the cross jab he used to shift his defender to get to an easy layup. We don't see the in and out between the legs that helped him get past his man and get into a pull-up, right? We don't see the jab step that he used to shift his defender before he blew by him and then hit his open teammate in the corner for three. Like, that's not what we see all over the ESPN top 10. We don't see that posted all over social media that often, because it's just not as cool. It's not as flashy, right? People aren't going to stop and watch it and really think about why it's important. But really, any fan of basketball who really understands the game is going to see that and be like, that's awesome right there. That's impressive when guys can use simple moves like that to perfection against elite level defenders. That's what's important, because you can repeat that. You can do that over. So when we talk about developing go-to moves, those simple plays that we can go to all the time are what's going to be important for us to develop. It really is the same thing with Trae Young. And, we see the ridiculous pull-ups from three, all of these crazy shots that he's able to make coming off of ball screens and all these different things. But what we don't see posted and we don't see put up on a pedestal is the way he uses his hesitation dribble off of a ball screen to freeze his defender and then make a play off of that. That's the important thing. Right, but it's a little detail that's not flashy, so we don't point it out, we don't look at it. But that is way, way, way more important than any of his highlights are. Okay, your ability to do that can actually translate and help you in games. Trae Young hitting a 35-footer, That's great, but that's not what you should be focused on. It should be, what can I take from this to make myself better? And that's the important thing, the simple things that they do. So in order to truly be an effective player, you need to commit to mastering the simple things, and then you can go to those things as often as you want to. And here's a few options, because I'm sure a lot of you are thinking like, okay, coach, like that sounds good, but what moves should I go to? Like what are you talking about? So I'll give you guys just a few options, and there's more, but this is just off the top of my head, just kind of a few. So you have the jab step, which is probably my favorite. We'll get more into that as well. We have the hesitation, which I love as well. And there's multiple kinds of hesitations you can go to. But like I just said, Trainer will come off of a ball screen and go right into a hesitation to kind of, especially if they switch it and he's got a bigger guy on him who's slower, he can go to his hesitation, then blow by him. If the defender sags off him for the hesitation, you can shoot the three. So a lot of really great things you can go to off of a hesitation. And then there's the punch drag, which we talked about before. The punch dribble, which is one of my favorite things to go to. The inverted drag is another great thing. You watch Luka Doncic play. He loves going to the inverted drag. And the in and out move, which we just talked about, the in and out is one of my favorite moves. And if you actually go to my channel, you'll find a breakdown on it. There's a playlist called Unguardable Move Breakdowns. You're going to find a video on the in and out dribble, okay? And it's one of the most effective ways to shift your defender. And it's super simple, super simple. And then there's the shimmy jab, which kind of would go along with the jab step, where essentially you're going to jab, bring the ball back to that side it started, and then go to that same side you jabbed to, right? It's a real quick move, but really it can be a counter to your jab step as well, or it can be kind of a go-to move as well. So again, why I love the jab step, because you can add that to it and you can make it really, really difficult to guard. Then the step back, there's a lot of guys who love going to the step back, it can be a tough shot to hit, but once you have it down, it can be a really great move to go to, especially if you're a bigger player and you're able to elevate over people, and or a quicker player who can get guys going downhill and quickly stop on a dime, step back. Then the float dribble is another one. So, kind of similar to the hesitation, where you're essentially going to float to the side, maybe raise up a little bit, kind of see how your defender plays it, and then whatever you want to play off of that, that's going to be kind of what you go to. So, those are just a few, but if you watch the best players in the world play, you'll see those guys use those all the time. And, so the question then becomes like, how do I go about developing that go-to move? Like what does that take? And the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to isolate that move. Okay, so let's take the jab step, for example. We're going to want to isolate that move and make sure we have the actual form down. Okay, we want to make sure that our technique, the way we use the jab step, is actually effective. So you can go about it a couple of different ways. So for example, I also have a breakdown of the jab step in that same playlist as the in and out move. If you go check that, you'll see my breakdown of the jab step. Or if you watch any of my workouts that incorporate a jab step, you're gonna see how I do it. And essentially, when you jab, you want to make sure that you bring the ball to your knee you're jabbing to. So you're gonna bring the ball from basically your hip to your knee. That way, you're going to sell that you're driving that way, right? You're going to make sure you look that way as you jab. You're going to have a violent step as well. All three of those things need to be there. You need to have the ball needs to move to that outside knee. You need to have a violent step, and your eyes, your head have to look that way so that you can really sell that you're going to be driving that way. So once you have that down and you can do that consistently, then it's about just getting reps, 1-on-0, just getting reps out of that jab. So jab into a pull-up. Jab into attack the basket, jab into a three-point shot, right? Jab into a one dribble step back, jab into a one dribble between the legs attack, jab into a two dribble behind the back, speed stop jump shot, whatever. So now we see that there's counters off this too, okay? So we don't just have to settle with, jab, one dribble pull up. We can also jab, and if we get enough space, we can shoot the three. Or we can jab and, we take that one dribble, they cut us off again between the legs and go. Right, so that's where those counters come into play. You have to be creative, which we talked about last week in the podcast. You need to be creative and be able to add those counters to the actual move. Very, very important that we're able to do that. So it all starts with, again, isolating that move, making sure we have the technique down. After that, you want to make sure that we rep it out, okay? And we have those counters too. You need to think to yourself, when you're developing counters, how can the defense play this? Right? What ways can they play this? Okay, so if I jab and they don't move for the jab, well, then I'll just keep going, right? I'll just go to the right side. So if I'm jabbing to the right and they don't go, I'll just go. If I jab and they jump to that side, I might have space to shoot the pull-up. If I jab and they're really giving me space, I can shoot the 3. If I jab and they go, and then, or maybe they don't go all that much, and then they cut me off when I take that dribble, then I'll go between the legs or behind the back so I can get to the other side and then beat them to the right. Right? So you got to think to yourself, how can they stop this? And it's the same way with we'll take a float dribble too. So if I'm using a float dribble, right, I float to the left side, right, and they back up, all right, they think I'm going to blow by them, so they back up, I'm going to shoot the 3. If I float and they're playing right up on me, then I'm just going to try and beat them off the float dribble. Okay? If they float and they jump to that float side, then I'm going to cross over, go between the legs, and go to the other side and attack downhill. Okay? So you got to think to yourself, how can this defender play this? Okay? And at the same time, it's also, you can watch film on guys, on NBA players, on really good college players, and you'll see them go to these things pretty often. Right? You watch Trae Young use that float dribble. Okay? A lot of times he's going to shoot off of it because he's such an elite shooter and he can get a shot off so quickly, but that's one of the most important things, is that he's able to repeat that, and he has all sorts of different counters off of that as well. Okay, Steph is great off of that as well. You can look at a guy like Damian Lillard, and there's more too, really. So it comes down to watching these guys, and again, paying attention to the little details, the simple plays. So, instead of watching full season highlights, go watch individual game highlights. So, for example, let's say you want to watch Bradley Beal. Right, go watch the game that he had 47 or 48 against. Trying to think, it might have been against Atlanta. Go watch that game, or I think he had 50 against the Bucks or something like that. Go watch those individual games where they're going to show you every single basket, and you're going to see how many simple baskets he gets. Okay, and you can look at those little details and say, what does he do? What patterns do I see that he keeps on going to? That's very important. So the biggest thing is that you want to make sure that you develop it correctly, because there's no point in having a go-to move that doesn't work. Okay, so make sure that the first step, make sure that move is, you're doing it the right way. Okay, that's the important thing. And if a move, the biggest thing to realize is that if there's a move that's worked for somebody else, it can work for you as well. Okay, especially when it's simple like that. Again, I'm not saying that every person can be Allen Iverson, because it's not true. I'm not saying every person can be Michael Jordan. I'm not saying every person can be Penny Hardaway. Okay, but I'm saying there are things that each of those players do that you can take and incorporate into your own game. So when it comes to developing a go-to move, you want to keep it as simple as possible. And I gave you guys a couple of things you can go to, but you want to see what works for you. So you might say, like, well, I don't know which one to pick. Well, two things. First of all, figure out what works best for you. Like, what is effective for you, okay? And that might take some trial and error. You might have to go and try a move, and maybe you just don't like it very much, or whatever. You're going to want to stick with that for a little bit. Give yourself some time to actually, develop it before you just say, it doesn't work. Right? Give yourself some time to actually get it down, give some good effort for it. And if it's still not your thing, then try something else. Okay? There's no shortcut to this. You have to be willing to put the work in for it. Okay? I can't tell you exactly what your move should be. I can give you some suggestions. I might tell a player, listen, and actually I'll tell everybody this. If you ask me, hey, coach, what moves do we need to have? I'll tell you, you need a jab step. You need to have a good jab step. You need to be able to, you need to have a good shot fake. Basically, those are the two things I'm going to tell you. Jab step, shot fake. Those are two must-haves, in my opinion, in the game of basketball. There are other things, too, I think are important. You need to have a good float dribble, I think, as well. And I think some sort of separation move in the mid-range or from three, either a punch dribble or a step back. I think if you have those basics down, then you can be really, really effective, especially if you can do those at a high level, okay? So how long is that process, though? Because obviously, you don't pick up a move in one day, right? So to me, once you have that move down, I think, you rep it out for about a week. Maybe you go through your regular workout, and at the end, you spend 20 minutes working on this move. Or maybe you just go out, at some point during the day, just go work on a move for 20, 30 minutes. I think you do that for a couple weeks, you'll really start to be comfortable with it. And then at that point, after you have it down, you're going to want it to transfer that, to translate into like a one-on-one. So, find somebody to play one-on-one with and try that move out. Okay, try the counters out to it. See what works. And again, it might not be a one-day thing. You might not be able to do it very well the first day you play against that person. Okay, maybe day 2 you're a little bit better. Maybe day 3 you're a little bit better. Okay, give that a little bit of time as well. Develop it and learn how to translate it into actual live situations. Then once you're comfortable with that, I would say take it to your pickup game. So you're 5-on-5, whatever, 4-on-4. Now that you're into context with team defense, now try and go to those things, okay? And be okay with looking kind of bad for a little bit. Be okay with messing something up for a little bit. That's fine as well. And and then at that point, once you have it down and pick up, you feel comfortable with it, then that's the point where you can transfer that into your actual games, okay? So, but ultimately it comes down to you being committed to actually developing that move, okay? There is no exact science when it comes to what move you should have, what moves you should have. And I say moves because you can have more than one. It doesn't have to be one go-to move, right? You don't, especially when we talk about what we have now. Okay, when I'm talking about simple things, you can master multiple simple things. You can master a jab step. You can master a punch dribble. You can master a jab step. You can master a shot fake. You can master a step back, right? You can have all these things into your game. All that I would say is that you want to focus on adding them in one at a time, okay? If you really are trying to master them. Now, you can have workouts that have multiple things in them. You can have a workout that has a jab step into a step back. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, you don't want to try and add in 7 moves at once, right? Because it's gonna be hard to master something doing that. Okay, so that's my advice to you guys. But again, keep it as simple as possible. That's gonna be the most important thing. And at the end of the day, like I said, if you can have a great jab step, a great shot fake, and some sort of or a great float dribble, ability to play off of a float dribble, which I have a workout. So if you guys go to my channel, check out my jab step workout, which is going to have both the jab step and it's going to incorporate the float dribble as well. So that's a really good workout for you guys to check out. And then shot fake as well, very, very important. And then also adding on to that, some sort of separation move in the mid range if you're attacking. So a punch dribble is my personal favorite. You can also go to a step back. You could go to an inverted drag or a speed stop, whatever you want it to be. There are plenty of things you can go to. And then kind of building those counters, being creative with those different things. So that's very, very important. So I want to get into a couple of questions. Have a few questions today. Really good questions this week. So again, if you guys ever have questions, make sure you send me a DM. That's the best way for me to see it. I get a lot of comments on YouTube, so sometimes I'll miss them. So if you want me to see it, for sure, make sure you send me a DM. So first question comes from Nathan. He says, I have a question. I asked it on YouTube, but I don't think you answered it in any of your podcasts. The question is, in terms of goal setting, would you suggest setting a long-term goal or many different short-term goals? This is a great question. And actually, if you guys haven't watched the very first podcast episode where I talked about, I believe it was the four steps to getting everything you want in basketball or something like that. Basically, the 4 steps to achieving what you want in basketball. Go check out that podcast. It's a little bit shorter. I think it's about 20 minutes. But the very first podcast episode, so go check that out if you have not. If it's been a while, you don't remember it, go listen to it again. Very, very important. Maybe one of the most important podcasts you'll listen to. Highly recommend you do that. But to answer this, and I kind of talked about that a little bit in that podcast, but I'll make the distinction. So when I talk about a long-term goal versus a short-term goal, you need to have both. In my opinion, I think you should have both sorts of goals. So obviously a long-term goal, when I talk about a long-term goal, typically I'm referring to something that's like a year or farther away. And you can have a different definition for it. If you want to say my long-term goal is 6 months from now, that's fine too. But my personal definition of it is, for me personally, if I'm talking a long-term goal, that's something that's a year or farther down the line. That's the time frame I'm looking at. And anything before that, I would consider more of a short-term goal. And I think it's very, very important that you have both. So obviously your long-term goal or goals, for example, maybe your long-term goal is that you want to start on your varsity team next season. Okay, maybe that's whatever. Or you want to become a varsity starter. So we'll say maybe you're going into your freshman year. By the time you're a junior, you want to be a starter. Okay, maybe so that you could be your long-term goal. Maybe your short-term goal is that you want to make the varsity team this next year. Okay, that could be your short-term goal, right? So now you have something more tangible to work to, because the thing is, whether your goal is start on varsity or, get a college scholarship or play in the NBA, whatever that goal is that you have that's long-term, a lot of times it will just seem like, oh man, this is massive. It seems like it's not even possible because it's so far away from where you currently are, right? So if you haven't played any varsity basketball, but your goal is to go to the NBA, well, that goal is going to seem like pretty unrealistic because you haven't even mastered where you are right now. Okay, so in order for you to actually, believe you can get there, and actually work towards it, because a lot of times it can be like, deer in headlights, right? Like, it's such a massive goal. Like, where do I even start? Right? So you end up just doing nothing and being like, it's a goal. It's a nice goal to have, but like, how do I even do it? That's where short-term goals come into play. So you want to have basically stepping stones that lead to that long-term goal, right? So if your goal is to make it to play college basketball, maybe your short-term goal is that, you want to start on your varsity team this season. And then, maybe another short-term goal you have is you want to average 15 points a game this season. And, maybe another short-term goal is you want to win the conference this year, right? Maybe your next goal is that you want to win the state championship. Okay, so there are your goals that are short-term, and you see those as very tangible goals you can get to. Okay, so I think it's important that players have both. So have your long-term goals, but also have short-term goals. Like, what do you want to happen this season, right? And I think to go even deeper with that, and this is what I talk about in that other podcast, and when I talk about goal setting all the time, is you want to not just have those goals, you want to also have you also want to map out how you're going to do it. So your steps you need to take. So if your goal is, I want to play college basketball, and your short-term goal is that you want to average 15 points a game this season, you need to ask yourself, what do I need to do to get there? Maybe the answer to that is you need to become a better shooter. So what are you going to do to become a better shooter now? Okay, so I have my long-term goal. My short-term goal is 15 points per game. Right below that, what do I need to do to make this happen? I need to become a better shooter. Okay, what am I going to do to become a better shooter? Well, I'm going to fix my shooting form. Maybe there's something in my form that's a little bit off. Maybe I have a little bit of a weird spin on the ball. Then maybe the next point is I'm going to get up. I'm going to make 100 threes a day, every day. Maybe that's your goal. And something like that. You got to give yourself some tangible things that you can follow, that if you follow those things, you can get to that goal. Okay? That's the most important part. You can have your goals, but then ask yourself, what can I do every day so I can actually move towards that thing? Okay, that's super important for getting to those goals. And once you it really leads to everything else. You have your it's like a pyramid, right? You have the very top of the pyramid, which is your long-term goals. You have the next step below that, which is your short-term goals. And then you have below that, how am I going to do that? And then below that, like, what is my day-to-day going to look like now? Okay, so if I follow those day-to-day steps, those get 100 threes up per day, work on my ball handling for 30 minutes a day, right? And I follow those two things, and that leads me to that how. Okay, so I'm a better shooter now. I'm a better ball handler now. Once I got there, now all of a sudden, maybe I hit that goal of 15 points per game, right? I continue to do those things with my goals, and then I hit that top goal. Now I'm a college player, right? So you have to look at it from that perspective, okay? All that, basically what you do daily, your choices that you make on a day-to-day basis are going to lead to where you are in a year from now, okay? It might seem like, time just keeps on going, but your life could look way different a year from now than it does today, all based on what you choose to do. Okay, so if you choose to not work at it, to not be smart, and I think the biggest thing, guys, is you want to make sure you really you cement these things down. Like, you have these goals actually written out. Okay, right? Like this is something cool to listen to. You might feel a little inspired, be like, you know what? Yeah, coach, I got to work every day. I really highly recommend that you guys go into your notes app right now, write down 3 long-term goals you have, right? And then for each long-term goal, write down maybe 2 or 3 short-term goals. Or maybe they overlap, whatever, but write down a few of each. Then ask yourself, what do I need to do every day to get to those short-term goals, which are going to lead me to my long-term goals? But that's super important that you guys should do. I think that in itself, being smart, having a plan, right? I always go to it, but, vision without action is a daydream, and action without vision is a nightmare, right? That's you've heard me say that before. If you've been an OG listener, you've listened to all that podcast episodes, you've heard me say that before. And that's really how it is. If you just are out there doing stuff and you have no roadmap of where you're going, then your chances are the result you're going to get is not going to be great. Okay, you might get what you want, but you don't know if you will. You might not get what you want. You might get something completely different from what your actual goal would have been. Okay. Obviously, the action first is required. You can write down these goals, but if you don't commit to doing those daily things or those tangible steps, it might not be a daily thing, but you don't commit to doing those actual physical things you need to do, then that's a problem for you, okay? And you won't get there. But you need both sides. You need the vision part of it, and you need the action part of it, okay? So I highly recommend you guys write those goals down. That's really going to help you. So really great question. And again, he said, I left it on YouTube, but you didn't see it. That's going to happen. So if you really have a question for me, DM me at Vision Driven Basketball. It's the best way to reach me, and I'll always see those. So second question from Tasker, he said, is it all right to have a bunch of different heights that you jump to on your shot? Like, say I need to get a shot off over a defender. Is it okay to jump a lot higher and shoot? Or should I just find a different shot to take? That's a great question, too. And the answer is that it's absolutely okay to have different heights you jump to. If you watch, especially the best guards in the NBA, a guy like Kevin Durant doesn't always necessarily need to change the height he jumps at because he's 7 feet tall, right? Although he probably does. I haven't watched enough of his film to be able to say that for sure, but I'm sure he probably does. But you watch Kyrie Irving, you watch Trae Young, Chris Paul, you watch these guards who especially can shoot the ball, and especially can shoot them in the mid-range. You're going to see them jump at different heights. So if you are wide open by yourself, the height you jump at, it might not be the same as if you're pulling up in the mid-range over a guy who's 6'7". Okay, it's going to be different. So that's a great question. You absolutely can. Sometimes you're going to need a little bit more height to jump to. But I highly recommend you guys go watch Chris Paul. Go watch some of his highlights and notice that. You're going to see there's going to be times where he's going to shoot at different heights. There's going to be different arc on the ball. At times, there's going to be a different height on his actual jump, and he has to be able to do that. So that's a skill that you can work on, and that's why I really, really I stress so much playing one-on-one, because when you play one-on-one against a good defender and you're playing with 3 or 4 dribbles, you're going to need at times to shoot the ball at different heights. You're going to have to take contested shots in the mid-range, and you're going to have to get the ball up a little bit higher. Okay, you're going to have to put a little more arc on it sometimes because your defender's right there. You might have to get a little higher on your jump. You might have to fade a little bit on that jump. Not every jump shot is going to be the same in a game. And the more angles you can hit a shot out of, the harder it's going to be for teams to stop you, because you can score against better defense. It's something that you can theoretically work on that during practice by yourself, but the best way to develop that is through playing. So getting into the mid-range, hitting those tough shots against tough defenders, against them playing good defense, I think that's super big for you guys. And that's a great question. And it's important to recognize the situation. So if you have game film of yourself, that's awesome to watch and recognize when are those situations that you have where you might have to get a little bit more height on your jump or a little more arc on your shot. If you can see that, then you can go work on that by yourself. You can go say, hey, you know what? I got into this punch dribble, which is when I notice it a lot. I notice it a lot. If I'm going to go to that punch dribble to my left side, I'm going to punch. If my defender doesn't go, I know I can still hit the shot, even if he's right in my face, but I got to put a little more height on that ball. I got to put a little more arc on it. So that's something that I have to work on. And especially like when I'm playing one-on-one, I love just working on that. Like if I'm playing with somebody, I'm just going to try and get to that shot and see if I can hit it against good defense. So that's super important. If you can recognize that and see the situations that you need that in, maybe you love to go to your step back, and maybe there's times where you need a little bit more height on that shot, right? And that might vary from game to game. You might have a game where you're going against a guy who's 6 foot, okay? And maybe you're 6'2", he's 6 foot, so you might not need to have the extra arc on your shot, okay? But maybe the next game you're going against a guy who's 6'4", so now all of a sudden you might have to at times have a little bit more on that shot. And that's a more advanced thing too. Like a lot of players aren't at the level where they can really do that yet. But they're for those of you guys who are a little bit more advanced, that's something you can consider too. And again, if you watch these NBA guys, especially these guards, when they're attacking, especially in the mid range is really where you're going to do this the most. They're going to have their shot is going to look a little bit different based on the situation they're going to be in. Okay, and I think that's a very, very important thing. I'll probably do a film breakdown on that at some point too, because it's such a great question. I think that can really that really is an important part for players to recognize, because if you really want to be effective in the mid range, being able to do that is huge for you. So another great question, Jaden. So my next question, he said, "Hello, Coach Ethan. I have another question. My goal isn't quite 10 feet, so his basketball hoop isn't quite 10 feet, and my rim is bent and sticking up slightly, and my goal is leaning. Is it better to just work on ball handling, or will shooting on my basket just mess up my shot?" So I get this question so much. Like I probably got this question 5 times in the last week. And essentially there's a couple different answers I'll give you. So for Jaden specifically, he said his rim was a little bit bent, so not too bad, not too far off 10 feet. And at that point I was like, you know what, like just it's really not gonna be that big a deal for you. But I get a lot of questions from guys who are playing on a hoop that's 9 feet, 8.5, 7. I have someone else who told me they only have a 7-foot hoop. And so that's a little bit different. So if you're on a 7-foot hoop, like, yeah, that's not going to be great. Like if you're shooting a 7-foot hoop, probably not going to help your shot all that much. Maybe you can try and circumvent that by like maybe sitting down and just working on form shooting from the ground. Maybe that would do something. But if you're actually doing moves into a 7-foot hoop, probably not going to help you all that much. Also, depending on how old you are. So if you're younger, then maybe it won't be as big of a deal. But I would say, if we're talking like 8 foot or above, so your hoop is 8 feet or taller. So, if your hoop's like 8 to 9 feet tall, obviously good amount shorter than a 10-foot rim. The thing with that is that it's not ideal, obviously. But if that's what you're working with, then you can go for it because as long as you have good mechanics, right, you don't have any weird side spin on the ball, your form is good, all those things, as long as you have that and you add it to, those moves and stuff you work on, when you get to an actual 10-foot rim, 10-foot hoop, the biggest change you're going to have to make is just your arc. So, that in itself isn't too difficult of a change. It's not as difficult as, moving the set point of your jump shot or getting rid of your offhand being too active or any sort of a thing like that. So if that's your problem, like, I have a 8 foot, 8.5, 9-foot rim, that's not too big of a deal. So I would say to you, like, don't worry too much about that. It's not too much of a problem. Again, obviously if you have access to a park or anything like that, like go do that if you can. So obviously with the pandemic and the quarantine and everything like that, a lot of people are just stuck at home and all they have access to is, a rim that's a little bit shorter. And my big thing always is like, just work with what you have. So if all you have is an 8.5-foot rim, work with it for now. Okay, maybe you put a little bit more emphasis on your ball handling training on, different things like that where you don't need a basket. But at the same time, you can still get shots up, okay? And obviously, again, not ideal. But the only real change you need to make when you get back to a gym is just that you readjust into that 10-foot rim, okay? So once you're able to do that, that muscle memory, if you still having the same release, all that thing, that's going to translate. It's just the arc you're going to have to change, okay? So it's not too big of a deal. Again, if that's the only issue you have, then continue to go with it and make the most of what you have right now. I've had a lot of people say that, like, they're able to get back into a gym, back to a park, and then, it's kind of crazy because every day things are changing in terms of being able to go out and do this, and then the next day, your city or your state closes or whatever. Like, things are changing by the day. I would say, though, again, work the best with what you have, and don't worry too much about it's got to be perfect, okay? It doesn't have to necessarily be perfect right now. It's really just more about the little things. Especially, I have a couple guys in the perimeter score system right now, actually, who are working with smaller rims because they're at home. And the biggest thing for me is, like, for you guys, you're not. It's not going to be as big a deal for you because you're still working on the actual space creation, the actual game situations you're going to be in, and you're going to be able to be effective in those as well. So if we're working on, getting, let's say we're working on our jab series or our shimmy jab series, right? You're still going to have that move down, right? When you get back to a gym or a hoop that's 10 feet tall, whether it's a park or a gym, you're going to have that move down. You're going to still have the ability to create that space and get a shot off. All that you're going to have to change is your arc on it. It's going to be a little bit weird at first, but you're still going to have that, okay? So don't throw everything out just because your hoop's a little bit shorter. Still work on those things. So that'd be another recommendation I give to you guys. Work on more game moves, more game situations into those jump shots. Okay, maybe you don't shoot a ton of spot up shots. That's fine. You can still work on those other things though. That jab step we talked about, the float dribble into a pull up or into a step back, a punch dribble into your shot. Okay, those are still things that those actual moves, those actual sequences will translate to the game regardless of the size of the rim. And then the finish, obviously, that'll be a little bit different, but cross that bridge when you get to it, okay? For now, do the best of what you have. And last question for today, and another good question, really a ton of good questions this week. And this is from Jay Souza, and he asked me, he said, hey, do you have any tips to find good pickup competition? And this is a question I get. I get whenever I talk about pickup, and I talk about it almost every podcast, basically, or I talk about you guys need to play more pickup, and what I had told him is basically the best way to do that, because the issue is a lot of players will tell me that they can find pickup, but like it won't be like the guys who are playing aren't very serious about it, so it's just like people messing around, or the players aren't very good, or whatever it might be. So I think the biggest thing you can do is you can be that person who organizes things. Okay, be the person who gets people together. So text your teammates, text your any friends you have who live in your area, anybody you know who's good at basketball who lives in your area. Text them, be like, hey, you want to play pickup? Even if it's just even if you only get 8 guys and you can play 4-on-4, that's still enough to go full court, play 4-on-4. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. If you don't have like good runs you can find, obviously if you can go to a park or a gym and there's people there that you can play with, that's cool. But if you don't have that, organize it yourself. You can be that person to say, hey, let's go to the park and let's play. Or maybe someone has a hoop in their driveway and you can get 3-on-3 going. You can get 5 of your teammates or 5 friends you have to come play. And you can really dictate who's there and who's not. That's my biggest thing. If I'm organizing pickup, I want to try and have the best people I can have there, but also guys who are going to like take it seriously and like going to help everyone get better, because there's no point. And I hate more than anything else to play pickup with people who like just don't really care and just messing around, not doing anything. Because to me, it's just a waste of time, right? You don't want to be stuck in that. So be willing to be that person, because here's the thing too. A lot of people are looking for pickup games. Like they want to play more basketball, especially guys who are good hoopers. Like they want to play more. And a lot of times no one's reaching out trying to set that up. So you can be that person who does that. You can be the person who says, hey, I'm trying to play pickup. Like, hey, do you want to come play? A lot of people are going to jump at that situation. And so be willing to do that. And as you do it more and more people are going to kind of go to expect that. And it's going to be easier for you to get people to come. The runs are going to get better every time. People are going to start to look forward to that. And it's going to help everybody. Everyone's going to get better. So, obviously right now with the whole pandemic, that might not be an option for some of you depending on where you live. And that's fine. So if you can't do that, then if you're able to, even if it's a one-on-one, then again, be hey man, you want to play one-on-one today? Simple as that. Okay. And once you're able to get back to playing with more people, then be that person who's willing to create the event. Okay. Don't just sit around and expect it's just going to happen. Okay. There's probably a park near you can go to, and you can be that guy. So I think that right there is just crucial when it comes to if you want to play better pickup. Okay. The biggest thing is being proactive in finding ways to help yourself. Okay. And that's a big part of it. So that's another great question, and a question I get pretty frequently, because I always talk about the importance of pickup, and obviously in 2020 it's really weird right now because we haven't been able to really play a ton of pickup, again, depending on where you live. Like I know where I live, there's teams playing summer leagues right now, so probably not the case in most areas. But if you can be that guy, take that on your shoulders to do. So another great question. Really appreciate all of the questions I got this week, guys. Like I said, this whole show revolves around your guys' questions. So every podcast topic is coming from questions that I get. So today again, all about those moves, those go-to moves, those counters, how to develop it. That's questions I get. So if you have a question for me, make sure you send me a DM at Vision Driven Basketball. If you don't even have a question for me, just give me a follow anyway. Nothing to lose by doing that at Vision Driven Basketball. Like I said before, if you guys could scroll on the bottom of the page, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Really would appreciate that. YouTube, like and subscribe. And like I said, going back to that, developing those go-to moves. Keep it simple, right? Develop it in. Make sure you have the actual form, the technique down. Drill it in. Play one-on-one and try it out. Move to pick up, try it out. Then you can translate that actually into your games. That's the simple process. And you can repeat that for multiple simple things. And once you have those simple things down, you can start to make them more complex. You can start to add different combos to those different moves. That's where the flashiness comes into play. But it all starts with your ability to have those simple things down. Okay? So appreciate you guys tuning in today. I'll see you guys soon. Peace. I want you guys right now, go to the top link in my description and get my free Elite Perimeter Scorer workout. We're going to work on a bunch of different skills that you need to have if you want to be an elite player in the perimeter, Make sure you guys check it out completely free. Click the link. I'll send it right to you.